You were an FBI agent, correct?
I investigated cases for the FBI for 26 years as a special agent on the streets.
The Latino community, which is my community. Did you find that they were easier to be scammed?
Latino immigrants in particular tend to trust other Latino immigrants.
There are people educating people how to lie on credit card applications, how to get these LLCs open and get $50,000, $100,000 on credit card and just use them and don't pay them. And
it means you are lying to someone to separate them from their money. And if anyone is being tempted to do that in small scale or big scale, this is fraud, this is a crime. You could end up going to prison for this.
As you know, Maduro is currently serving some time.
There are civil judgments against Maduro, and if we're talking about a civil lawsuit, it's not the government's job to make that right.
With what's going on right now in the United States, immigration-wise.
Sure. It has been very publicly reported that the Trump administration has a quota of trying to deport 1 million people in a year. If you are in this country otherwise legally and you've gone through the immigration process, one thing you need to make sure you do not do under this current political climate is
¿Qué tal, señores? Bienvenidos a otro episodio de Sin Filtro y este va a ser en inglés porque tengo un invitado súper especial, un agente federal del FBI, experto en fraudes. Lo van a conocer un poquitico más y necesito que lo sigan aquí. Aquí están sus redes sociales de él, pero para todos ustedes que nunca habían conocido un agente federal, Tom, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Did you understand anything of what I said?
Nah, every time I meet someone with an accent, I know they're smarter than me because they speak at least one more language than I do.
The 100%. Well, you know, don't let me fool you. I used to be a con artist. So, basic questions here. You were an FBI agent, correct?
I was for 26 years. I became an FBI special agent back in 1995, and I investigated cases for the FBI for 26 years as a special agent on the streets. And my first office was Chicago, where I served for 13 years. And then they transferred me to Honolulu, Hawaii. Oof. And I was an agent there for 7 years. And then they transferred me to Jacksonville, Florida, where I served for the final 6 years of my career. And I retired from the FBI in 2021.
So you were an FBI agent. And I was telling you, the Latino community, we don't know many FBI agents. They're not our neighbors.
Prepare to be very disappointed.
Our kids don't go to the same school probably, or they don't tell us about these things, and we're scared shitless of the FBI. Shitless.
Really?
Shitless. I mean, the whole, especially now with deportations and everything that is going on, we don't want any contact with law enforcement. So what does someone have to do to be an FBI agent? I mean, is it like what you see on TV or?
Well, it's the TV, I think, misleads people, right? You don't wake up one morning as a 17-year-old boy and have two guys in suits standing at the foot of your bed saying you have been chosen.
It's not like the Men in Black.
No, not like
You're
that.
not
at
a
all.
Man in Black.
No, sadly. And so what happens is you go to college, you go to university, and you get a degree, and you get a degree in something competitive and analytical like accounting or finance or engineering, computer science, biology, chemistry, physics. And so once you get that degree, they want you to go to work in that industry, in the private sector, hopefully. I majored in accounting. So I was a certified public accountant in Chicago working for a big accounting firm. And I did that for 3 years. And then you apply to become an FBI agent. People go to FBIjobs.gov and put in an application. And then you go through this long, horrible application process that takes forever. And if you make it through every step of the process, you go away to the FBI Academy in Quantico, Virginia. And it's sort of where they're teaching you, it's like a police academy on a military base. They're teaching you how to shoot, how to investigate,
Fitness, they make you run.
Physical fitness, right? Constitutional law. And so, and then if you graduate that after 20 weeks of living in the dorms there, then you have a badge, a gun, and a job for life.
Nice. So, but you gotta choose what field. Meaning, you knew you were gonna go for numbers.
Yeah, Juan, they don't hire people like me because we're fun to be around, right? The reason they hire certified public accountants is because we might have an idea how money flows in and out of organizations. And so they do have, CPAs like me who are special agents with the gun and the badge investigating drugs and money laundering, for example, or terrorist financing. But for me, I really had a love of kind of frauds and swindles and scams. And so I gravitated into the fraud area, and that's really all I've ever wanted wanted to do for the past 30
Me
years
too.
is investigate frauds.
Yeah.
Investigate people just like you.
Yeah. So me too. Fraud has always been something that. Do you think most FBI agents or an agent have to have some kind of a criminal mind at some point to think like the criminals think? I mean, is that a
Yeah, no, I think
is that a thin line?
It is. And so I think a good FBI fraud agent is able to try to get out of their own head and look at the world through other people's eyes and try to understand where are the vulnerabilities in society that criminals can exploit to get money, and then try to find people who are doing that. Again, a nice thing about fraud cases is that there's generally a victim who has lost money. And so that's really where the cases arise from.
So there has to be a victim.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's an institutional victim, like a bank or the government. But a lot of the times for the investment fraud cases that I investigated, the victims are nice people who trusted somebody and they were lied to separate them from their money. And that's what fraud is.
And I'm going to ask you some questions that you may or may not know the answer. The Latino community, which is my community. Yeah. Did you find that they were easier to be scammed than the North American community, the United States citizens?
You hate to paint with a broad brush, but what I have seen, especially in the Latino community, is what we call affinity fraud, where Latin... Yeah. You familiar with this term?
Yeah.
Where Latino immigrants in particular, tend to trust other Latino immigrants. And so when a Latino immigrant who's a con artist or a defrauder presents them with an investment or business opportunity that's just trying to steal money from them, I think the Latinos tend to let their guards down, not believing that a fellow Venezuelan or Colombian or Mexican would actually have the audacity to steal money from them because they trust each other in these immigrant communities. And so I don't think that Latinos are more or less susceptible to fraud, but I do think they're more susceptible to trusting other Latinos, and that trust sometimes makes people turn their brains off a little bit.
And that's the nature of my case. My victims were all Latinos.
Yeah.
All immigrants. Most Venezuelans.
Sure.
I'm Venezuelan.
Yeah.
So there was a level of trust.
And do you feel that you exploited that trust?
100%.
Okay.
Because I was the one that grew up here. I knew how to speak English. I knew how to read it. I knew how to write it. So they trusted me that I knew the system better than they did.
Right. So if you were a black guy or a German guy or an Irish guy, they probably wouldn't have been as trusting in you when you told them about this opportunity to make money with very little risk.
And as a matter of fact, you sell it like that. You know, the white guy doesn't want anything to do with you. You got to trust your people. And that's where we're at right now, too, with immigration fraud. I don't know if you follow these attorneys that are doing all this crazy stuff, making themselves be attorneys and faking paperwork and so on and so forth.
Exactly.
Now, is there a scale of cases that you can say, yeah, that is a crime, but we're just not going to investigate that? That's not a priority. Are there priorities?
Without question. Remember that we're in a nation right now with 350 million people, but there's still only 12,000 FBI agents.
Nationwide?
Worldwide, but yeah, but there's only 12,000 FBI special agents. And so an FBI agent really needs to pick his or her battles to make a decision about which cases to open that are going to have the most amount of victims, the biggest dollar amounts, and the highest societal impact. And so if somebody decides to lie on a credit card application and then they default on their credit card and the bank loses money, we're talking about a single victim case with an institutional victim. Even if the loss is $30,000, $40,000, maybe the FBI agent who may get that opportunity to work that case needs to decide, is the juice worth the squeeze?
Okay.
Meanwhile, we have a Ponzi scheme over here, an investment fraud scheme with dozens of victims and millions of dollars in losses. The FBI agent needs to choose which cases are going to make the biggest difference in society. And so there's a lot of crimes that slip through the cracks as a result, especially in the nonviolent or fraud area.
Like you said, credit card fraud, I think, is hot right now.
It is.
I think it's there's people organizing this thing like a Ponzi scheme.
Yeah, well, people aren't carrying cash anymore, so more and more people are using credit cards and debit cards to in their day-to-day lives than ever before.
But like right now in my field, there are people educating people how to lie on credit card applications, how to get these LLCs open and get $50,000, $100,000 on credit card and just use them and don't pay them and that kind of stuff. And I don't see anything happen on those fraud cases because I guess they're not a priority right now, maybe.
Well, again,
The institutions are.
I will also kind of blame my colleagues at the U.S. Secret Service for that, because the FBI and the Secret Service have always been butting heads about which frauds to investigate, because the Secret Service protects the U.S. president, right, and foreign heads of state and the president's family, but they're also supposed to be investigating bank fraud and counterfeiting of currency. The FBI also investigates bank fraud. And so what the FBI and the Secret Service did is they shook hands and said, okay, Secret Service is going to handle all credit card fraud and debit card fraud and ATM fraud. And the FBI is going to handle all other types of bank fraud. And so, but there's a lot of mission creep or overlap where FBI agents will work a credit card fraud and Secret Service will work a loan fraud occasionally, but that's the way it should be. And so, yeah, when I was an FBI agent, we saw tons of these scams where people are going to fund their business startup with credit cards. And so what we would look at in those situations are not necessarily the poor person who was looking for financing for their business, but the ringleaders who bring those people together to take advantage of them for a big piece of the action. And so they would be the targets, but we would expect that the individuals who received the money, who fell for these scams, will cooperate with the FBI, and oftentimes they were not charged.
They were not. Oh, the guy that got the credit card.
Right, the poor guy who got the credit card because
The guy that was misled.
he's trying to keep his bodega open or start a landscaping business and using credit card financing to fund that startup cost. If he had some bad information in his application, but it was done by a third-party broker, we're really going to focus on the third-party broker, because the FBI's mission is to take down these criminal enterprises, not necessarily to beat up on the little guy.
When you were on the force, is it called the force?
The Bureau?
The Bureau? I guess. When you were in the Bureau.
I wasn't a very forceful
There's
guy.
no force in the Bureau? When you were in the Bureau and people ask you, let's say you were at Chipotle, and people ask you, this is what do you do for a living? Did you disclose, oh, I'm an FBI agent? Or you said,
How good looking is the woman who's asking me?
Okay, yeah, that has to be. Yeah. How skinny is the guy?
Yeah, no, so
It's got to be a weird.
I was always very transparent about being an FBI special agent. So I was also the guy, in addition to working cases, the FBI, when they needed a spokesperson to go on television on the courthouse steps to make a comment to the media, I was that guy. So it never really made sense for me to lie to my neighbors and friends about what I did for a living, because when they turned on Channel 7 that night, there was a good chance they would see me on television discussing a case. With a stranger at Chipotle, maybe it's not his business what I do for a living, or the guy sitting next to you on the airplane. So it's really a judgment call as to whether you feel like having that conversation.
So being that exposed, I guess you were never undercover.
I did do undercover work, but I needed to change my appearance pretty drastically through shaving my head and.
It works.
Yeah, I know, exactly. You're a new man, yeah. Putting in earrings and going to a different city than where I was actually assigned.
Okay. How did you like the undercover work?
I didn't at all. No, I hated it because, again, they hire FBI agents because we're supposed to be good and honorable people, but the undercover agents are being hired to lie, right? And so I did it, and I was very good at it, but it also maybe didn't bring out the best in me, right? It brought out the con man in me.
So, for what I understand, that's what you watch on the movies. People get drawn into it. There are agents that go rogue, I guess.
Without question. Because again, you're hanging out with people, but you also have a better understanding of criminals. When your friends are people who commit crimes, you understand that maybe people who commit crimes aren't bad guys all the time, right? They go home to their wife and kids. They may donate to charity. They may go to church on Sundays, but they happen to be doing fraud or crimes also. Whereas a child watching Marvel movies and reading comic books, you think the bad guys are bad guys 24/7.
Correct. And they have a look, and they have a profile.
Exactly. So going undercover for me and kind of rubbing elbows with the underworld was a real eye-opener that most people really aren't evil, but they're just reacting to the circumstances of their lives.
Can FBI agents vote? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Is there a political, I don't do politics, but is there a political?
I don't vote myself, and I'm not, because I worked political corruption cases for so long that it just felt like a
Political corruptions in the United States?
Yeah.
Or associated with foreign governments too?
In the U.S.
In the US.
And it always felt kind of gross to me to be involved in partisan politics. It felt like a referee betting on the game, And so, FBI agents vote. I think, but FBI agents never discuss at the office what their political affiliations are. My guess is that they tend to lean rather conservative because they don't use drugs. They're not, they're usually family people living in the suburbs. So they're living conservative lifestyles, whether their politics are conservative or not. And I think that's probably consistent with
I read, I went to your website, which I never do. I never prepare for these things. And I read that you were trained by the CIA.
Yeah, I went to CIA interrogation school. So one of the things that I got very good at during my time as an FBI
By the
agent.
way, are you dating somebody?
I'm married.
You're married?
Yeah.
It's gotta suck to be married to you.
Well, I'm sure my wife would agree.
Because the last thing you need is your girlfriend to go to the CIA interrogation academy.
Well, for what it's worth, my family members have done very little that required interrogation. But no, one thing I got very good at in my career was interview and interrogation, the ability to sit across the table from a criminal and getting them to confess to me about their crimes, which puts my case on a real fast track to getting prosecuted.
Even when they don't want to confess.
Well, they never want to confess, but
Kind of misleading is not the right
Not
word.
misleading. You probably want to say manipulate.
Manipulate. Thank you.
But I would argue that my manipulation is really it's a long story how I do it. But I went to both FBI and CIA interrogation schools, and what happened, Juan, is that I got very, very good at interrogating criminals. It's so much so that I wasn't just doing it on my cases, but other agents were bringing me in on their cases to get the confession from the bad guy because I became very good at that.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Wow. Is that something teachable?
It is teachable,
Or you need to have a skill that is
Well, I think
in you.
no, it's teachable, and anyone can learn how to be a good interrogator. And I'm on the public speaking circuit right now, and so I'm giving a series of speeches this fall to various government investigative groups on how to be better case managers, interviewers, and interrogators. So it's not probably something I could really pull out, give a full lesson in a 1-hour podcast, but the bottom line, what I'm trying to do is get inside the bad guy's head and gain an understanding about why they are doing what they're doing, right? Is it what financial pressures are happening in their lives? What was their intention? Were they really looking to harm people, or were they looking to keep a scheme alive long enough so everyone could get paid back? And try to understand that and make the focus of the conversation, Juan, not, you did the crime. No, I didn't. In that kind of debate. But instead of saying, listen, I know you did the crime, what I'm trying to understand is why did you do it? What was going on in your life at the time that made you think that it should be the right thing to do? Did you intend that all these people would lose your money? Or were you hoping that at some point some liquidity would come into your scheme to get people paid back? And once you take the judgment out of the conversation, people are often willing to talk to you about what went wrong. It becomes a conversation. So I'm never doing the good cop, bad cop. I'm never raising my voice or my hand to anyone else, but I'm having a conversation to try to understand their motivations. And in the process of that, they end up admitting to their conduct.
And you are doing PI work right now.
I am
correct?
a private investigator now.
And your focus is fraud.
Yes.
People are getting scammed. Let me find out where the money's at, where did it go, who did it, that kind of stuff.
Exactly, yeah. It's all I've ever done as an adult. So I'm not like a skilled laborer. So that's the only skill I have is conducting fraud.
Yeah, it's kind of like me. All I do is talk for a living. So
yeah,
and don't put a hammer in front of me because I'll use it as a microphone.
Right. So I make my money through private investigations and public speaking.
Okay. And right now, would you say that with the economic cycles of the country, when the economy is not as good, would you find that fraud is a little bit, people tend to scam each other a little more?
It's a great question. And I don't know that I've been through enough economic cycles as a private investigator to find that out. But with the FBI, we were drinking from a fire hose. Good times and bad times. Then money was, we had more cases than we know what to do with. And I think that's been the case for the 5 years that I've been investigating as a private investigator also, though we're dealing with a pretty good time lately where, the economy is slowing down. And I think more people who are losing their jobs due to AI or other reasons are turning toward looking for opportunities to make money so they could provide for their families. And sometimes those opportunities they're looking for turn out to be scams.
Now, you mentioned AI. Back on your days, AI crimes were not existent.
Yeah, not at all.
Right? I think you didn't even catch the beginning of the AI
no,
era,
I mean, right.
You?
People always ask me, what's the FBI doing with AI now? And I'd say, I have no idea.
But it has to be a little more complicated, I'm assuming.
I would assume so. I keep thinking about all the times where I wired up an informant or an undercover agent with a camera and sent them into a meeting with a bad guy who is that now conspiring with them unknowingly on video. And what wonderful evidence that is. I wonder what it is like now to be an FBI agent and doing that, and then having the defense attorney tell the jury, he never said that. It's AI. You're looking at the guy with your own two eyes committing a crime, and now the defense attorney can say the FBI created this in a laboratory, which the FBI would never do, but that
it's an
creates that
argument.
reasonable doubt to the jury.
It's an argument.
Yeah. So we need to there needs to be some methodology to analyze video to tell if it's real or not.
Now, did you ever work, and this is a topic that, but it has to be, like I said, my audience is not ignorant on the sense that they don't know how to read or write, but they don't know the system here. And sometimes they're too naive.
I wouldn't know the system if I went to Venezuela. So there's nothing to be ashamed of with that.
And one of the crimes that is the most shocking for us is pedophilia of crimes.
Sure.
Especially
Crimes against children.
Especially the luring the kid right now. Did you have to work any of those cases? I know yours is financial, but were you ever involved in something that involved money plus, let's say, minors, trafficking, that kind of stuff?
It was not my expertise, but I was used in my undercover capacity to try to lure. I played the role of a 50-year-old guy who could not get laid, which one was the role.
What did it come natural?
I was meant to play. And what we would do is we would solicit teenage prostitutes and child prostitutes. Hopefully, you don't really always know how old they are, to my hotel room, which is all wired up. And then we would try to rescue the kids who came, the prostitutes. We saw them as victims, and then try to catch the pimps who brought them in the parking lot. So those cases worked very well. And we were trying to get the kids into social services. A lot of them were addicts. And again, some of them were adult women as well. And because you don't always know when you're.
And this was here in the United States.
Yeah, it was here in Jacksonville.
Did you ever do any cases overseas?
I did. Went to Spain, did a case over there. I've traveled a lot to do speeches. I'd been to the Bahamas, investigated there, Canada, Turkey. But I was never assigned overseas, but I would, have cases where it was required for me to go over there to conduct an interview or liaison with local police about a complicated investigation.
I'm talking to you and I'm thinking, man, I wonder if those skills will help me on my sales career.
I think so.
Right?
Without question. Yeah. I mean, listen, is it okay to call you a con artist?
Yeah. Listen, of course. You're very good friends with one of my colleagues. So I'm going to give a shout out to Matthew.
Yeah. And so I seem to be immersed in making friends with a lot of former con artists who are in the prison to podcast pipeline. And
yeah, that seems to be your sponsor. We're sponsoring your business.
Yeah.
All right.
But I love you guys.
This podcast is being sponsored by a $39 million fraud case,
Yeah, but I can't even remember the question, but I do think though that I enjoy investigating con artists, and I enjoy getting to know as friends former con artists, because you survived on the same skill set that I survived on, your wits and your ability to be articulate and explain things to people. And so I always love talking to good talkers, because I find that their IQs are high and they're also good listeners.
Now, let's talk about some cases. I obviously I don't know your cases because I don't have access to that. Do I have access to your cases? No. Well, I guess if I look investigated on public records.
I do social media where I discuss a lot of the cases.
But I've seen your social media. Some cases are insane.
Yeah.
Insane. Some are, I'm familiar with them.
Okay.
Sadly.
Yeah.
But crazy cases. A case that kind of comes to mind as this is the weirdest case I've ever seen.
Oh man, I've had so many
I'm
weird.
sure you had a bunch.
I have. You're putting me on the spot.
I know there was a case of the guy kind of like masturbating on the airplane that I saw you were talking to Matt about. Yeah, which it's...
Yeah, see, I worked in Honolulu, like I said, for 7 years, and Hawaii is such a long flight from anywhere else because it's so remote that what happens is people drink a lot of alcohol and they take Ambien. And the combination of Ambien and alcohol is really bad news, because what happens is you black out. Okay. And then for a percentage of the population, they're still conscious, but they have no recollection of what they're doing and their inhibitions are gone. So you find people deciding that they're going to try to make out with or molest their seatmate. And sometimes the seatmate's not into that. You had a guy who was taking care of himself on the plane because he got really horny. You have guys who decide they want to rush the cockpit and need to be subdued by the flight attendants, so they don't rip the door open to people who have mental episodes. And the crazy thing is, though, we would get calls at the FBI. Hey, we had another guy on an airplane attack the flight crew, and then we would show up at the airport, escort them off the plane, bring them to a conference room in Honolulu. They'd just been on the flight for 8 hours. And the person would eventually kind of come to their senses, and they'd be in handcuffs being interviewed by 2 FBI agents on the plane. And they would have no recollection of what they did.
That's crazy.
Right. So they're being charged with interfering with a flight crew or attempted sexual battery on an airplane. And they end up pleading guilty to that and getting some punishment, but they really don't have a great recollection of what they did because of this combination of Ambien and alcohol.
And the fact that they were under the influence doesn't make it better, but
Doesn't excuse your crime.
it doesn't excuse your crime.
If you were drunk when you were out there selling mortgage products to people,
Yeah.
tell that to the judge. The judge is going to go,
Yeah.
"Oh, I'm sorry, Juan, you were drunk. We'll let this thing go."
Well, my argument was gonna be, hey, I never pointed the gun at people. I presented an opportunity and it didn't work out. And my attorney advised me not to use that argument in front of the judge.
It's a tough sell.
Probably good advice.
Yeah, I mean, not drilling down too much on your case because people know that story, but I think when people look for the pitfalls of fraud, they need to understand what fraud is, right? Fraud is theft by deception. It means you are lying to someone to separate them from their money. And if anyone is being tempted to do that in small scale or big scale, they need to have that little voice of reason pop up in their shoulder and say, this is fraud, this is a crime, you could end up going to prison for this. And so, it's really simple, right? Because everyone in kindergarten learns the difference between a lie and the truth. And you can put as many complications in there as possible with the nature of investments, or whether it's a bank, or whether there's insurance involved. But the bottom line is you are telling someone something that is not true, whether it's a bank or a person, or an insurance company, and then you're going to be getting money from them because of that thing that you're saying that's not true. That is a fraud, and you could wind up in an orange jumpsuit.
Or a green jumpsuit, or there's different colors.
I know you're a very fashion forward guy.
We don't go only orange, all right? Not everybody goes to the shoe.
Yeah.
Did you do the arrest yourself?
Yeah.
So you investigated, you went, you arrested.
Yeah, and then the FBI agent needs to shepherd that case through the entire criminal
That's
justice
correct.
system. So so every court appearance that the defendant is
That's
at,
correct.
I'm there right next to the prosecutor, shoulder to shoulder. And the prosecutors like that because the case agent knows the facts of the case better than anyone else.
Yeah, that's correct. I remember my agents were there through every hearing, every motion. Even if I wasn't there, they were there.
Did you plead guilty or take it to trial?
Shit, no, I pled guilty.
Yeah, smart.
Yeah.
Because fraud cases almost always plead guilty.
The paper trail.
Yeah, right. There's nowhere to go, right? 'Cause you have the victims telling their stories, which is always very consistent about what they were told that wasn't true, and so here's what I talk about with investment fraud cases. My visual is that here's what you're told your money is going to be invested in. Here's what actually happened with your investment when we look at the financial records. In the perfect world, those two things are entirely overlapped, right? I told you I was going to investigate in stocks. Your money went to stocks. And if you lost that money, that's not a fraud, right?
That's a risk.
I'm not the bad investment police, right? But if you were told your money is going to be invested in stocks or mortgage products, and then that money was used to buy vacations or pay back other investors and all that, there's some amount of daylight into what actually happened. And that amount of daylight between what the investors are being told and what actually happened to their money is the quality of the evidence in that case.
Now, we're going to get a little FBI criminal tense here.
The great debate.
Yeah. And I think everybody that has been on my shoes will say this. The victims, we feel, tend to be led into the story that the prosecutor wants to tell the judge. And some facts may be a little enhanced, a little
I
misconstrued.
I can't speak for any unethical agent out there, but I was very interested in hearing from the victims what they experienced. And if I felt like the victim was lying to me, I would definitely push back on that because I don't want to. My nightmare would be the idea of putting someone into prison who wasn't guilty or with insufficient evidence.
And the other thing that I like to tell people, especially young people, I have a summer camp. Oh, by the way, you should go to one of my summer camps one day. I do a summer camp for teenagers.
Okay.
And I bring ex-convicts
Oh, interesting.
to talk to them because they think, right now they think that because they shave an eyebrow, they're gangsters. And
Like a scared straight kind of program?
kind of like a scare straight kind of program. So I tell them about snitches.
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
that's how the system works.
absolutely.
Our snitches son sapos. Los que no saben lo que un snitch es un sapo.
Informants.
Informant. Thank you. That's the terminal.
Or now we call them cooperating human sources.
Are you kidding me?
That's what they're called now.
It used to be CI on the cases.
Now it's CHS.
CHS.
CHS, yeah, cooperating human source.
And I guess it's because of AI. I guess they have to be human.
Well, we have, there's other sources of information other than human, right?
Would you say that most cases, or maybe most is a broad statement, but a lot of the cases get started because of an informant?
I would hope so, but no, most cases on the fraud side are started because victims come to the FBI saying, I think I've been defrauded.
Really?
Yeah. Now, in the course of that investigation, I am on my lookout for people to be informants, right? I'm looking for somebody, whether it's an ex-girlfriend of the bad guy, the ex-wife of the bad guy, a trusted friend of the bad guy, who's willing to be honest with me about what the bad guy did, and maybe even wear a microphone and have a conversation with the bad guy about what he did, hopefully, if I'm doing it right, and to increase the quality of the evidence in my case. So yeah, you call them snitches, I call them heroes.
These are potatoes. Yeah, and you have to be, I'm not going to warn you, you don't have to be careful, but you have to understand that people will turn on you. Do things right.
Thank heavens.
Do things right.
Yeah.
Because your best friend is the one that is going to turn on you.
Right, especially if the best friend may have some culpability or some exposure in the case, right? Because at the end of the day, when the FBI is investigating a case, it's every man for himself.
Do you have would you say that ex-wives tend to be a little more open to cooperating?
Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned.
A little bit more motivated to kind of tell you where the money's at and how he did it?
Yeah. They if they're not going to get the money, they want to make sure that the government has it, not their ex.
It's if you were going to put up in a ballot, would you say ex-husbands behave the same way or not really?
I may be stereotyping here, but I feel ex-wives are more vindictive, but ex-husbands will often cooperate as well.
I have this argument with my ex-wife.
Okay.
Because I keep telling her that I know she set me up. And because the prosecutor was like, had her phone number, speak dial, and I'm like, well, this is not normal, She keeps saying no, but I'm pretty positive. But there seems to be a pattern. Like your closest people are the ones that are going to probably turn on you.
Well, the closest people are the ones with the best opportunity to tell the truth to the FBI and set us straight about what's real.
Have you ever had a case where the person that cooperated ended up being charged and the criminal was innocent? Like kind of, misleading the case.
If an informant or a cooperator or a snitch, like you say, provides us with information, we take it with a grain of salt. And what that means, we try to independently verify what we're being told. Just because someone out there is going to tell me that you're a criminal, I'm going to need some more evidence than just taking someone's word for it. A lot of times, though, our informants have some criminal exposure, and that's why they're cooperating, right?
I was an informant at some point.
To try to get money, to try to get time off their own situation, or mitigate the problems that their own behavior have caused, and so sometimes they have to end up paying the price by going to prison, but hopefully they go to prison for less time than they would otherwise because they cooperated with the government, which everybody should.
Now, this part is the money section.
All right, lay it on me.
Because my viewers are going to go crazy with this. This is the one that we put on Instagram. This is the short for Instagram.
I'll be ready. Let me get my hair ready.
This is the one where it's going to get you the calls on Latin TV. I know you are not involved in this case, obviously, but you read cases and you're on top of what's going on.
Sure.
As you know, Maduro is currently serving some time on pre-trial on Brooklyn, right? Which is where I started my bid, actually. So, but he's lost some civil cases. As a matter of fact, he lost $300 million in damages for some American citizens that were arrested and tortured in Venezuela, some ex-Marines. Winning that case doesn't mean they're going to get that money. Because, come on. All right. Is there a chance that those assets eventually can be found? We have a problem with Venezuela right now, which is a lot of political characters are being sued and are losing, and we know they have assets here. We just don't know who has them, where are they at, under what name.
Are they being sued and losing in Venezuela or the USA?
Here in the USA.
Got
Yeah.
it. So there are civil judgments against Maduro and other people here in the U.S.
But there's no assets that can be traced.
That's the problem, right? And so,
Yeah.
and if we're talking about a civil lawsuit, it's not the government's job to make that right. Right. And so it's not like the FBI is out there enforcing civil judgments when someone chooses to sue the Maduro government or anyone else overseas. And so it would be up to the attorneys for the plaintiff to try to identify the assets that they can try to attach onto it so they can get the money. I'm also going to confess that I am not an expert in that case or Venezuelan politics. So if I say something ignorant, please.
But the government is not responsible for finding those assets.
Not in a civil suit.
Not in a civil suit.
If it's a criminal case, such as a money laundering case or any criminal case where there could possibly be forfeiture or restitution made to victims, then the government would be involved with that. But if it's, Juan versus Maduro, the government has no dog in that fight.
So you won, and that's it. It's on
Right.
paper, basically.
Well, right. But again, hopefully you have good attorneys who hire good forensic accountants to try to track down some assets that you can attach to.
So if you need a good forensic PI, right here, this is his contact information and his social media. You have to follow this guy. His stories are amazing. He talks to a friend of mine on his podcast quite regularly, and you guys discuss. His audience is a little different because
Yours is way better.
well, let's say mine they're not as interested in crime.
You're a better looking guy too.
Yeah,
so
well, that for sure. And listen, he's lost that argument. He's lost it many times with me. Just to wrap this up, at the end of the day, with what's going on right now in the United States, immigration-wise,
Sure.
would you say that Latinos should behave and this sounds horrible.
No, I agree. I know where you're going with this.
At a higher standard that perhaps the standard citizen, because the consequences are
Absolutely.
a little bit more.
So it has been very publicly reported that the Trump administration has a quota of trying to deport 1 million people in a year. And let's face it, there's not 1 million Latino criminals out there to deport. But they really want to prioritize people who've committed crimes. And so what happens is that you start looking for somebody who wrote a bad check and was found guilty of a misdemeanor of writing a bad check. And then ICE goes after them to try to deport them to hit those quotas. Now, some Americans are going to say this is a good policy. Other Americans are going to say this is not a good policy. I'm not here to weigh in on that. What I am here for my Latino friends is to say if you are in this country otherwise legally and you've gone through the immigration process, one thing you need to make sure you do not do under this current political climate is even the slightest illegal activity. You drive the speed limit. You don't write bad checks. You don't put false information on a loan application. You don't do anything because that's going to be bad because, again, the ICE right now is trying to fulfill a quota that the White House has handed down to them, and you do not want to be part of that quota because of a dumb mistake.
Did you ever want to work for Homeland Security? By the way, not all Homeland Security agents are ICE agents. All right, you have HSI and you have all these. Did you ever want to work for Homeland Security? Did you ever want to transition to another agency like DEA or maybe?
No, I don't really have an interest in the war on drugs, and so that's not nothing I'm preoccupied with.
You're a fraud guy. Your thing is
I'm a fraud guy, right? They don't hire. I'm a nerdy accountant with a gun, and so the idea of me doing anything
the most
other
dangerous
than,
kind, by the way.
Yeah, but there was no Department of Homeland Security when I became an FBI agent. The Department of Homeland Security was formed after the 9/11 attacks in 2001, to bringing a bunch of other agencies together under one umbrella. The FBI was not part of that, and by that point, I was firmly established as an FBI agent. I have no problem with Homeland Security agents. I think they're doing a very difficult job under very difficult circumstances. It's just not
100%.
my thing. It's just not my thing.
How do you feel about conspiracy theories? You have to hate them.
I hate them, but I like reading about them and I love debunking them.
Okay, but they're ridiculous. Yeah. I mean, for a federal agent to think that a lot of these things are happening because there is a family somewhere that is playing all this, moving all the strings, and the puppet
It's
master.
nonsense. But I do think that it's a very complicated world, and I understand why conspiracy theories can give people a sense of comfort that the world is somewhat of an orderly place. The idea of there being some Jewish overlords out there moving the pieces around is got to be comforting to people, because the alternative is that the world is just filled with a bunch of random actors doing random things, some good, some bad. And that's a scarier thought than the idea of someone out there who's the big puppet master. But there is no puppet master.
There you go. No puppet master. So you are responsible for your own shit. Thank you, Tom, for being here.
Thanks so much for having me on. Let's do this again.
I think this is the first bilingual podcast that you're in, right?
Yeah.
Have you ever been interviewed by like Telemundo or Univision or any of these Spanish-speaking
I
channels?
have not. And again, I don't speak Spanish, so I'm not sure that'd be the best candidate for that. But I would love to go on any show. I mean, listen, I'm a huge fan of the Latino community.
Yeah. Next time we're gonna put them on the OnlyFans page with, to make sure we'll see if we can.
Yeah,
have
I'll sell some foot pictures.
Yeah, with a gun and a badge. Put the gun, the badge, and the feet. Thank you for being here. The Latino community needs to, because if I talk to them from a criminal point of view. This is what bad guys do. But they don't believe the consequences of actions. They think maybe I run out of luck, or maybe I got caught and they won't get caught, or we have
the rules are different now because the stakes are so much higher for the Latino community of immigrants to behave according to the letter of the law, whereas before, slight indiscretions would be overlooked. That's just not the case right now. So just be careful.
This was so important to me, because they had to hear it from somebody that was in the bureau, that has been involved in cases, that still actively investigating cases where there is fraud and scams and that kind of stuff. So this is the truth. Pórtense bien, presten atención, dejen de estar estafando a la gente, dejen de estar mintiendo en aplicaciones de crédito. Thank you, Tom, for being here. And you'll see this guy around in one of my events. I'm sure we're going to bring him down to Miami. All right?
I love that.
Thank you for being here.
Muchas gracias.
Nos vemos. Bye.